Welcome to Brick City Radio, a Lego podcast for Lego fans. I'm Puck.
I'm Becca, and today we have such an exciting guest. I'm literally jumping around inside. We have Alex Kastelic, who is the lead for the Bricklink Designer Program. Hi, Alex.
Hey, Alex. How's it going?
How's it going? Doing well.
We're
Where
really
are
glad
you,
to have you here today.
Yeah, I'm so excited. Got so many questions to ask you. Where are you hailing from today, if you don't mind us asking? As you know, I'm on the south coast of England.
Yeah, so I'm in Southern California. So the Bricklink office is in Irvine, and I live in Newport Beach. So we're just down the road.
Nice.
What a wonderful place to
Terrible
live
place,
and to
I know.
work.
Yeah, awful. It's terrible.
I'm
I don't
assuming-
recommend it.
I'm assuming there's a beach nearby, right?
Yeah, so this is something that's gonna be interesting. I was
that is
relocated to
interesting.
my garage because this is where the Lego collection is, and if I'm too far away, then the motion sensor goes off, and then my
Oh, no.
lights are gonna go off. So
Is that when you have to kind of like
hey,
wave
there
your
we
hands
go.
in the
It
air
saw
a
me
little
moving
bit?
again.
The
So if you see me
amazing thing
bobbing
of
around, I'm trying to
technology.
keep the lights on.
Yeah, I understand.
It's okay. We'll all join in. So
just
we'll
kinda-
make you feel right at home. We'll all just
Yeah.
wiggle around.
Every 15 minutes, there'll be a jiggle.
Hey, that's okay. That's okay.
Okay. We'll call it the wiggle jiggle. It'll be fine.
Yeah.
So now we've wiggle jiggled. Do you want to just for people who may or may not know what the Bricklink Designer Program is?
Or even what Bricklink is. Like some people don't even know.
What Bricklink is. Do you want to just give us like a kind of a brief? That's a difficult question because it's a lot, but a brief description of what that is, and what that means. You're being the lead, which I know is something you've stepped up to recently. Means and yeah, just give us a sort of a brief description.
Sure. So real quick, Bricklink, for those that are not aware, we started off as a fan website back in 99, 2000, and started off as kind of the fan marketplace for buying and selling new and used Lego, kind of peer-to-peer. Think of it as like an Etsy type platform where you can create a store as a fan, and then you can sell, Lego to other fans. So if you need to have, if you're missing a part from an old set, something that's retired, there's no real easy way to find that part. So Bricklink has that whole catalog of every part, every set, every inventory of all those sets, every minifigure, basically a historical catalog of everything. But then also we have the Studio app, which is for digital design, basically. So that's something that we utilize for the Bricklink Designer Program because all models are submitted digitally. But then that leads into Bricklink Designer Program, which is what I'm responsible for. So the Bricklink Designer Program is kind of a fan design competition, fan design models for the highest affinity designers and fans out there. So kind of our sweet spot is, as you say, like a standard Lego system set is widely available, has mass market appeal type thing. So the high end of the curve. There's some other stuff in the middle. Maybe you might say Lego Ideas might be something like that platform where you can submit to it. It can be anything. It's very inclusive in what you can submit, since you can submit IP and other types of builds to it. And then those are marketed to a larger audience as well. So I say that's kind of like the medium side. And then the very end of the curve is the Bricklink Designer Program, which is designed to cater to fan designers who are creating their models, submitting it to a program, but then also realizing those models kind of one-to-one as they were submitted. So where like Lego Ideas is set up so that your model is the inspiration for a future set that will be released, whereas ours really celebrates that model as it was designed. And then we do very limited quantities. So up to 30,000 sets, everything's pre-ordered. It's only available once. Because we have that one-time ordering kind of pre-order event, that makes it easier for us to do one-off sets like this, where we're doing smaller volumes, because there's things like inventory and marketing and all these things that have to go into it. Well, we don't really have to do that as much because it's kind of a one-off thing. So it makes it more economically viable to do 15,000 sets. So It's kind of the idea of the program. We have it set so that basically 95% of the original model is what you will typically see. Now you start to see that evolve over the series from series 1, 2, 3, 4 on. You'll see more on series 4 because there's a lot of learnings from series 1. But every 4 months, there's a new program kicking off or a new series starting. So we just finished submission intake for series 6. Which was like third and fourth week of September. Series 6, Series 9, Series 12 will always be the second or third and fourth week of September. Series 7 will be in third, fourth week of January. So 7, 10, 13 kind of on. So it's always the same time every year.
That's
So that way everyone
fantastic that you're
knows.
doing it that way.
Yeah, it kind of, the cadence works out really well in that every 4 months there's a new series starting off. So let's say, we're all adults, we're busy, and you kind of feel like, I'm stuck. I know I can't make that one, but I can plan for, the following series and not feel like you're being left, kind of being left out, or you can't fit it into your busy schedule. So, every 4 months there's something kicking off. And then 2, I think what we're starting to see with it is that, you're seeing like these mini themes kind of pop up because at any given moment there's 5 series in development. And so, like one of the things that I saw from series 1 was, people were like, oh, the general store is a great build. Love it. It's Wild West, but there's nothing else Wild West with it. Well,
I'm
here,
almost
series
done
5,
with it.
you
I
can see
love
it's a
that.
great build. Yeah.
Yeah,
Wukash is great.
I just
Is a
loved it
great
straight
designer.
away. Reminded me of I don't know if anybody used to watch Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman, but it really
Yeah.
reminded me of like the little general store there. And you see, this is what I love, because then I in my head straight away was like, oh, I could build a whole Dr. Quinn Medicine Woman set out of Lego, and and that is so that one set inspired that thought. So it, the other people's creativity sparks inspiration for other people, even for people like me who I have never mocked in my whole life, not really. And so that's one of the things I really love about seeing people's different designs. I love the voting process, and always involved with that. It's just I really think it's just such a fun thing to be involved with, because even if you don't have the ability to buy the sets, for whatever reason, you can still get involved in the process, and voting for the ones that you like. And I really enjoy that.
Were you expecting the themes to start popping up like that? Was that something that you guys had predicted?
No, not at all. And we assume that there will be things that are more popular than others, like buildings. Buildings are always going to be popular because, many
Yes, of
fans
course.
have, city layouts and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Castles kind of had a big resurgence.
Yeah.
Pirate, legacy theme. Classic space, I thought there would have been a lot more classic space.
I
and
thought
it's just
so
kind of
too.
has
I
been,
think there should be.
there hasn't been a ton. But, part of me too thinks, well, it's a very niche audience in a sense from a nostalgic perspective, because the amount of adults that were around at the time where classic space was really popular is such a small fraction of the Lego community nowadays, if that makes sense, because
No, it
Lego
makes total sense.
has really kind of expanded so much over the last 5 years, kind of post-COVID timeframe. So I don't know if that's part of it, but you see the
No, it
amount of
makes
stuff built, and then it doesn't really see it as in a representation standpoint. Maybe that's just because, those, the other thing too that we try to encourage with our program is building digitally. Because not everyone has, Lego's not cheap in a sense, and
Nope.
not everyone has, huge
No.
collections of parts they can draw from. So, that's why kind of trying to encourage building digitally, so it hopefully lowers the barrier to entry to submit, especially some of these larger models that we have in our program. But the other thing too, the side of that is that many classic space fans are older and may not.
They don't want to use a computer.
Right, they don't want to be able to use a computer, or they're not. They don't know how to use Studio at this point. So, that's it's always kind of one of those things. But
Would you
It
say
is the way.
No,
Go
you
ahead, Becca.
I was
It
just
is
going to
the
ask. I was just going to ask is there a like a percentage that you would say, I don't know, 30, 50, 30, 70% when submissions come in, to sort of how many of those are digital versus an actual build?
I
Or
don't
does
know
it
that we
vary?
have any actual data on that because you can see. So one of the requirements when you submit is that your main image is rendered, and there's a couple different reasons for that. One, it makes it a pretty even playing field. Now you can say, well, some people are better at rendering than others and have, digital design skills that others may not for graphic layouts, that kind of thing. But
Yeah, and some people use
the
really
the
sophisticated
bare
rendering.
yeah, but it's not as big as the gap between photo skills. So the best photographers, that the kind of the peak up
Yeah, I was
there
gonna
is
say.
way different than the trough of bad photography. So rendering
Yeah.
at least makes it completely, at least that bar is maybe in the middle instead of it could be really low. So we always make sure that the first image has to be a render. That's a stipulation. Everything after that it can either be, oh, here, I'm dancing.
Wiggle.
Can either be it can either be a render or it can be photography. That's fine. So
Okay.
you'll see sometimes people have that, but um, it's not required.
I gotcha.
Wave,
Yeah,
wave the
and
light.
it's even more interesting because
Render.
you can even use your photography skills while you're doing your renders. So
Mhm.
when I am going through in studio and I'm building and I'm doing renders, I can then, well, I want this image to be at the same level as the minifig looking into, let's say, like I'm building a zoo, looking into the cage so I can see the behind of the minifigs and looking into the build with
Yeah.
whatever animal is in there. It's an amazing process that you're able to do digitally. Um, with the Bricklink Designer Program, did you guys think it was going to take off as it did because Lego Ideas was already around? And I remember when Series 1 came out, I'm looking at Studgate as we're speaking, it's right next to me. And it was a little rocky. The beginning of the program was a little rocky. I bought 2 builds from that first wave. Um the Studgate and then the diner. And I remember I was like, hey, these need a little bit of work. There's
Mhm.
that work in there. Is that what you were saying when you guys said you learned from the first series that you needed a little bit of guidance to the builders? Is that how that happened?
No, so my reference was into Series 1. So
Okay.
we call round, so the 2021 Invitational. So, and this is kind of some history too. So there was the AFAL Designer Program, which was the initial kind of fan design program that started before Bricklink was acquired in 2019.
Okay.
So they were in partnership with Lego, but Bricklink wasn't owned by Lego at that time. So they weren't sets actually made by Lego. They used Lego bricks, but they were not made or assembled by Lego, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But it was in partnership. They were sanctioned, if that makes sense. So
Mm.
then it went to the 2021 Invitational, which happened after, which is kind of the next iteration of the program post acquisition. Now those sets, the big difference that happened with those sets is that those were all previous Lego Ideas 10K Club sets. So that's why it was called the 2021 Invitational, because they were
Right.
invited to
I see.
participate. Now, one of the big challenges that you then learn from that is, well, these are models that were designed to be inspiration. They were never designed to be manufactured, if that makes sense. So
Yeah, that makes
you will
sense.
see there's a lot of those models are much closer to mocks than they are closer to Lego sets. Whereas that was one of the big learnings from the 2021 Invitational is that, hey, we need to have these, like these are being submitted. We need to have instructions with them so that fans are already kind of thinking about how they are built. And so then you can, there's also a screening process too, where we just invited them because they were like, oh, these are cool models. Let's just do these. Well, there was no screening to see, are these even feasible? What techniques are in them? So that's part of the process now too, is, we'll see, okay, is this feasible? Can this set be manufactured? But that's really hasn't been too big of an issue so far. There's only been one model that ever had that happen. But then they were selected as a finalist the next series, so it didn't really even matter. But yeah, so no, that was a big learning though. Is hey, these sets, like, they're just they're much more like mocks than they are Lego sets. So, I say, okay, well, mocks are over here, Lego sets over here. Anything in the series portfolio will typically be in the middle, closer to Lego sets. But they're not designed by a Lego designer. So there's going to be a different build flow. There's going to be just different design language that's used. Like, there's standard Lego design language that you won't typically see in these sets. And so that can be a good thing, in a sense that we're targeting, higher affinity fans who are wanting more advanced techniques and different types of part usage and that kind of thing, that maybe we couldn't include in a set that would be targeted for a 6+, 9+ technique. These are true 18+ sets. Doesn't mean that they're difficult to build. It just means that there's some more advanced techniques in there that you wouldn't see in a normal Lego set. So when we still go through, we also go through the entire additional Lego kind of development process. Now, we have some slightly different rules, but we still go through the refinement process the whole way through. There's a couple steps that we skip towards the end that are, kind of longevity type testing things, because that's not as necessary with these models, but it's pretty much the whole process. So
that's awesome. Yeah, touching on like I said, with like Studgate and the diner, I actually had to go in and kind of adjust some of the building techniques that were used, because there were things that I was like, oh, well, this is just going to collapse on itself at some point, like the weight distribution. Or with the diner, you couldn't actually fit minifigs inside. The roof would not close. You couldn't fit them behind the bar. There little adjustments that took place. But for example, with the general store from the last wave that came out, it feels like a full Lego build. It feels like, a designer has actually built and wrote the instructions and gone through. It feels a lot different than what I built previously, which is really, really nice. Because it works well. And I didn't have to go in and adjust everything. So
and hopefully you'll see that it's, things like the wall panels in the general store are, kind of a different technique than you might never see.
Amazing technique though.
Especially how you kind of achieve that shingled pattern look, or like the rocking chair outside is such a highly detailed. I don't know if you've gotten that part yet, but the rocking chair outside, like, it's a very detailed little build, and I don't know if if it would be ever to be too detailed for the Lego style set, but
I don't think there's anything such as too detailed. I love little details.
Absolutely. It's usually the little details that sort of, like exactly what you said. You just, you pointed the little details out of that set. And I think that's what, we love. We love, those little details is what makes it special. And what I love about the program is that it gives you the opportunity to, everybody thinks differently, makes things differently, creates differently. And so, we all love Lego. That's why we're here. But this gives the option for different types of designers to submit, and then you get all these different types of ways to build things and ways to put things together that, like you said, might not necessarily come out of a Lego set, because that's just not how they build and design. But I just think it's such great an opportunity that literally anybody can submit, and I love that.
And
how long have you?
I was gonna say that's kind of an interesting area where we have the detail. That's one of the things we're trying to do too, is have a lot of detail in models. And kind of going back to what you mentioned earlier about Series 1, some of the learning, that was one thing that we learned is, we originally said, okay, well, we'll keep it 99% the same. You're getting the set that you voted for, minus, a couple of things that we had to change out for stability and buildability things. So you might see some minor differences in certain areas, but that's one thing, like feedback from Mountain Fortress, we learned, okay, hey, this interior is a little sparse, or we wish there were more minifigures. Okay. You're starting to see that in Series 3, where hey, we had enough time in Series 3 to where we caught it early enough in the process, where we could still make changes to the models. So we're like, okay, we'll do that. Series 4, you'll start seeing that a lot more too, where it's, hey, here's more detail, here's more minifigures, here's the things that, fans are really kind of expecting, or, adding story in, or, just that kind of stuff, trying to think about, some of the things that you would expect to see in a Lego set that, maybe, some fan designers are very good and know and can do all of that, and other fan designers maybe need a little bit of help, with some kind of guidance or coaching on that. So, that's something we're kind of stepping in a little bit more to help provide that, kind of coaching aspect, to make sure that these models are really stand out.
And that's awesome because when you look at the sets, that's what a lot of people are looking for. They're looking for the displayability. Sorry, I stumbled there. The detail of it. So you have, where can I put this? Is it going to go in my city? Is it going to go in a shelf? How it looks. But when you were saying like the story, that should be like a key factor in, I think, on every set is there has to be a story going on, because if I'm going to display it, I want to know why am I displaying a general store? Like what is the story behind this? Oh, well, the buggy tells the story. The guy is bringing in goods to bring to the store to sell, and people are coming to buy, and it flows very nicely. But then you look at, I think it was, I have to go back to the diner again. The diner looks really nice, but when I built it, I was like, there wasn't really a story going on here. It was just a building. There wasn't, oh, well, I'm going to this to buy burgers and, to listen to 50s music or whatnot. It was more of, oh, well, I get a cool car and a cool building, but that's not really a story. It was kind of just there. So I'm glad that you guys took that feedback and ran with it. I remember when you guys put out I guess it was a survey or a form that you guys sent out for all the people on Bricklink to ask questions about, oh, what can we do better to make these things better? And I love when you guys put those surveys out, because I'm like, yes, I'm going to answer all these questions because I know that they're going to actually read these. And I'm so glad that you guys do read them.
Yeah, well, this the thing though, is that we're very privileged to be working with a fan community that, as I say, everyone in the fan community is professionals at something else in their daily lives. And so that's such a great resource to be able to have people just share knowledge or share what their insights are, with how our website works or how our program's working, things that we could do to improve it, because, we are a small team. But I like to think that we're fairly agile in what we're able to accomplish. So, there's no reason, if we're seeing kind of very consistent feedback on certain things, it's like, okay, well, let's listen. We can course correct. And fortunately, every 4 months, there's a new series kicking off. And so you don't have to wait the full year and a half development cycle to see changes happen.
So on the
appreciate
topic,
it. Always keep that coming.
On the topic of you're a small team, can I ask how many people are on your team, like in the size of, because you have a lot of things that you guys have to go through. So when you said small, I'm thinking small.
Yeah, no. So as a whole, Bricklink is already a very small organization. And most everything we do is kind of website based. So we were a product team in a sense, or a physical product team within, kind of a web development ecosystem, if that makes sense. But so yeah, there's myself. We have a project manager, and then we have 3 designers right now. So
Okay,
it's a small, but we don't
that is
have,
a really
we
small
don't have a
team.
lot of the other things that other teams have, but we also don't have a lot of the other responsibility that other teams have too. Where it's kind of, we're in and out, and so once a series is finished, we don't have to worry about the shelf life and the marketing and all the other things that go along with it. Now we do marketing and have that kind of stuff, but it's a little bit, it's obviously you see it's very different in a sense from the general Lego marketing, as it is. So yeah, we're a pretty small team. But that's something that in business, you're small until you can prove that that you need to have more people, and then you go from there.
Yep.
So
Yeah, that makes total sense. And
Like,
coming
think-
from someone who does Lego pretty much regularly, like as like a source of side income, it is interesting to see what a small group of people can do, because small people can do big things. Becca had a question. Go ahead, Becca. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, I've worked in, small teams, both my current job, my last job as well, where, very small teams with a very large responsibility. And I think sometimes being in a small team helps sort of like compress the passion and compress that, the love for what you're doing. And obviously, like you said, you don't do that much marketing. Well, kind of sells itself, doesn't it? Because, the people that know about the Bricklink Designer Program and are part of it, we're all AFOLs. And, it kind of, people that come into the community learn about it through other members of the community. And so I think the people that know about it pass it on to other AFOLs, and so that's kind of part of your marketing job done, isn't it? Really, and then of course we're in the age of social media, aren't we? So somebody posts a picture of one of the sets online, and I say, oh, that's amazing, did you make that? No, it's Bricklink Designer Program piece. Oh, what's that?
There's more marketing.
Yep.
So I think a small team is actually, I think that makes sense to me with the love that I have for the program. I think that makes perfect sense that you guys have this nice little small team of of people making all that happen. I think that makes it more special for me.
I think
you have to get a little creative too when you have a small team. So virtually, you might stumble a little bit in certain areas, but we're also able to accomplish quite a bit because we have a lot of purview as to what everyone else is doing, and so you kind of learn a lot about the entire process because you're very visible, sort of, and things being a little more siloed. If everyone has clear defined roles, so that always does help a lot too. Where we can.
I do this, you do this, and you do this. Yeah.
So,
the Bricklink Designer Program, I've noticed, also has drawn in the collector group. Not even just like the builders, the people that are going to open them and build them, but y'all really have drawn the collector market in. Have you noticed that as well as being part of when you're selling with people that are doing the crowdfunding? Do you notice that a large wave of people are just collecting these?
No, we typically don't, which is actually kind of surprising because, it was kind of some of the original thought is, oh, okay, well, there's a lot of people that are buying, all these sets because they're kind of the one-off nature of it. And it really hasn't turned out that way, which is interesting.
That's fantastic. That's actually fantastic. I'm a firm believer Lego should be built.
Well, so, we did you had talked about some of the surveys and questions that we had done. So we had sent them out to everyone that had purchased Series 1 and Series 2, actually. And what we saw is it was a very high number of people who had said, I purchased this to build it, which is what you would totally expect. But if you also kind of look back and think, oh, well, these are kind of limited edition sets in a sense because they're limited quantity. Well, what they used to be at 10,000 and below that, because not everything sold out at that point, those are much more limited than 30,000. Right. So I think people kind of learned that from Series 1. It was like, yeah, these are limited, but they're not that limited. in a sense, but also too, the fan community has grown exponentially since the original programs in 2021. So we're able to see, okay, well, how many people are, there's a limit of 2. That's one of the big things that we get asked questions on a lot. Well, that just makes it open for scalpers. And it's like, not that many people are buying 2 of
Yeah.
each set. So that would be the thing that's indicative of, these are all being bought up by scalpers. That's not what we're seeing. Everyone, most orders are 1 set, maybe they're buying, like from series 1, like a Parisian Street and a General, or and a Snack Shack together type of thing. Not many people buy all 5, and not many people are buying, all buying 10 in a sense. They're buying duplicates of everything. That's very, very low amount. And so really, I think it just goes to show, to highlight all the other data we're seeing, is that the fan community is just way bigger than it used to be. And so that 10,000 to 30,000 actually was kind of helpful in a sense, because it scaled with the fan community. Because it's not great, it's not great business to say, hey, this thing you've been following for a year is sold out immediately, from day one. If you're an adult and you have to go to work and you have a meeting, or, it goes live. So like Series 3 goes live Tuesday, which is October 8th at 8 a.m. Pacific time. I think it's like 3.
It's 10 a.m. 10 a.m.
Central
US, 11 a.m. Eastern, and 3 p.m. British Standard Time. Yeah.
Yeah, and the reason for that is because that's the only time that we're all in the office together. So, we're out in Southern California, the Bricklink office.
That's an early day
There's
for y'all.
Lego.com teams in London, and there's people in Billund as well. And so they're, 3 p.m., 4 p.m. for them. So it's the only time. I'm sorry, Australia. And the rest of the APAC countries, you kind of get the middle of the night, but that's the 1 hour of overlap that we have when things go live.
We
I
understand
remember
about time scale, time zone challenges. We've had to navigate some of those through podcasting. But I mean, it like you said, you've got this crowdfunding coming up for Series 3 on the 8th, and do you get like excited? Like, I'm excited because
I'm super
you
excited.
see the whole process, and I think it gets really addictive. But being in it and being obviously responsible for it, do you get nervous, or do you get what does it feel like when you're coming up to like you said, we've talked about, the 8th of October, Series 3 crowdfunding. Well, we've also got voting for Series 6 opening on the 7th of October, and that goes through to the 18th, I believe. What does it feel like for you guys at this time, coming up? Is it nerve-wracking, busy? What is involved behind the scenes, and how does that feel?
Busy for many other reasons. So we just had fan media days. I just got back from Billund, had fan media days. We had Scareback, then immediately we were at LA Comic-Con this week. It's like, that's the crazy thing right now. So that's what I'm nervous and crazy of, is it's just been go, 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 go. But no, for Series 1 and 2, it was more nerve-wracking than it is now. Because now, we've been through the process several times. Because, the thing that I don't think is well known about BDP is that BDP really kind of goes against the grain of many of the internal processes of the Lego group, in a sense. So, the way that we utilize Lego.com, limited time sales and globally launching at the exact same time, that's not how typical Lego sets work. Things go into back order, so it isn't really too big of an issue about how many things are manufactured, or they'll just manufacture more. We don't really have some of those luxuries, in a sense. So, everything that we do works off of our production date, and our production slot is like this little gap that is scheduled 2.5 years out. That says, okay, this is the slot scheduled for BDP. And then we plan everything up to that date. So we kind of work backwards from that date and say, okay, this is when submission intake is.
That's just amazing.
Yeah, well, because you got to think okay, well, we're utilizing all the resources that the existing, manufacturing facilities, and there's the manufacturing of the elements that happens independently of the assembly of the sets or the packing of the sets.
Right, of course.
And when we pre-order, it's still a month and a half till we go into manufacturing. And so when that happens, that's why there's kind of a 5-month delay, because we're waiting as long as we can and giving people a month to order sets, assuming they're still available. They didn't sell out. But then, so that we have enough time to tell the manufacturer or to assembly how much they need to manufacture, and then those immediately go out. And so that's kind of what that time frame is. And then before that, maybe 7 months before we do crowdfunding, is when we design freeze and say, okay, you need to go manufacture these elements and make sure there's enough of these in stock so that when we use them down the road, that they're available. So it's, you're kind of seeing all of this out in public, whereas all of this whole development cycle is totally behind the scenes, and you just see a set maybe a month before it's released and images and that kind of stuff. And so it's like, oh, here, it's available. Us, it's, it's a whole year and a half.
There's
that's
plenty
kind
of time
publicly
to
out
plan
there.
to buy.
Yeah. Well, that too, and yes, they're a little bit more expensive sets. But, partly that's what, kind of some of the things that people are asking for, but then too, the only thing that makes it it's also part of the viability.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I'm trying to think back to what the root of the question was. There was something around,
I
then I
just
went off on
wondered
a
what it.
tangent.
I just wondered what it felt like.
Oh,
For
so
us,
yeah,
it's,
yeah.
yeah, because we're excited, we're waiting. We've voted, the sets have been chosen, and I want to ask you about that process in a minute. So I know what we feels like for us, but I just wondered what that felt like from your side, and I think you really answered that question, because
Yeah,
it's not.
he did. He
For
really
us,
did
we're
answer
like
it. Yeah.
waiting for that date, but actually for you, it's been a long, time in, coming.
Yeah, I don't want
And the
that to come
nerves are
off
gone now,
as
like you
like
said.
cold and we're not excited for it. Like, to me, it was, is the website going to work? And we've kind of
Yeah.
worked through those things. So now we hopefully, fingers crossed, we should be good. But barring any catastrophe type things, we
Unseen.
should be good. We know we've
Yeah.
changed, we've developed some things for Bricklink, like for Series 1, our forecast, kind of what we thought things were going to be, was significantly lower than what actually happened. And so the amount of visitors that we had was just an insane amount for what we've ever had. So we didn't know, okay, well, we 5x our capacity, but we didn't think it was going to need to be 15x or, whatever, the technical, term of it was. And then for the same, for Lego.com, they were like, global, you're doing global all at once. So there was learnings on their end too, because they normally split
the
time
first
zones.
time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm
So
sorry
those are
about
some
that.
things that we,
Us
we're kind of
April's be
working through. But
crazy. We are mad. But we're just it's such a passionate group of people, isn't it? And like I said, we get really excited, and I'm really, really looking forward to the voting opening, for 6. Because I love, and it's sometimes an unexpected field gets real, something you would never expect people to go for, is really, really popular.
Mhm.
And then other things that you think, amazing. And of course, that's because everyone's likes and dislikes are different. But what I was going to say is, how does the process of choosing the finalists sort of come around after the process is closed? Because we go in, we vote, we have fun, we do our bit, and then that closes. And then how much are you able to share about the process of what happens after that point, and how you choose who are going to be those finalists there?
And actually,
So
I have
the way
a
that
question to bounce off that after you answer it.
Okay. Yeah. So the way that this works, and I've kind of explained this a few times on either webinars or at fan conventions, that kind of things. But the main way that this works is, I like to say it's kind of democratic to a fault. Or it's almost too democratic, because we go based off of fan votes. So the highest voted sets are what have the first kind of right of refusal, essentially, for being selected as finalists. So if you look at Series 5, for example, Adventure in Transylvania was the highest voted set we've ever had. Okay, so that's assuming there's no conflicts with a set releasing a year later from the Lego group. That would be kind of a portfolio conflict. We would say, okay, that's through. That's the number one set. Okay, it meets all of our design, brand guidelines, and it it can be manufactured. It's stable. There's nothing wrong with it. All right, that's your number one set and the highest amount of both. Okay, so then we would say, well, that's a sci-fi fantasy set. So anything that's kind of in that sci-fi fantasy vein is blocked now. Kind of going down the list, you'll say, okay, well, that slot's already filled because we want a diversity of theme, but then we also want diversity of size. Okay, so that's a 4,000 part set essentially. So then we'll go down the list and say, okay, well, what's the smallest, highest voted set? So we'll go down the list and it was like number 12, Popcorn Wagon. There you go, boom. So Popcorn Wagon checks the marks for 500 to 600-ish part set. And it's not, sci-fi kind of Dracula
You
fantasy
answered my
trope.
question.
So yeah. So then we say, okay, well, now we have a high and we have a low set, and then they kind of balance each other. So across all 5 sets, we want a threshold, or we want an average of about 2,500 parts. So that can manifest itself in several different ways. Series 4 was mostly medium set because the highest voted sets were medium. There wasn't any really highly voted smaller sets, and so therefore you couldn't balance a high set with it. So they ended up kind of all being roughly within the 2,000 to 3,000 part area. And a weird thing about Series 4 too is that because we were kind of constrained that we had to be within that range, we try to pick from like the top 50-ish in voting, because then eventually you're kind of just getting too far down the list. And we got to the bottom of where we find is kind of generally acceptable, and there wasn't another theme. So then we had to go back up to the top and then go, and that's how you end up with 2 castle sets.
Oh,
So, and unfortunately at that timing, it was, crowdfunding for Series 1 just happened and Mount Fortress sold out in 2.5 hours. So everyone's like, wow, it's because Castle just sold really well. And it's like, no, I can't
No.
tell you what's going on, but
That's really
it's
interesting,
now
though.
looking back
Yeah.
at it, it's like, yeah, no, it was just, there were some sets that we couldn't do, and then most of the other sets that were the highest voted sets were medium to begin with, where typically the highest voted sets are 3,000 plus
I
part.
would
So
love
so
to be
then,
a fly on the wall in
getting
that
back
room.
to Series 5, we then say, okay, well, let's go back up to the top of the list now that we have a large and a small set. Okay, well, what's the second highest voted set? Thieves of Tortuga. It's another 4,000 part set. Like, that's going to be hard. What can we do? Okay, let's see what else is available down the list that would potentially allow us to slot that in. Well, the highest voted medium set, which I would say is 22 to 2,900 parts, is Mushroom Village. And there it is at number 5. Okay, perfect. That's auto in because it's
So
but
cute.
it's sci-fi
Love
fantasy.
that.
Does that conflict?
Love that.
No, it's a different type of sci-fi fantasy, and sci-fi fantasy is a kind of a larger category, because we've condensed some of the categories where like space, sci-fi, fantasy is all one category now. Just because one of those is selected doesn't mean that all that entire category is blocked.
Right.
That's just there because for the voting, we didn't want it to be like
Yeah.
there's only one fantasy set, so like the voting for that's kind of weird and just like a bad user interface thing. So we've combined some of them, like boats, vehicles, airplanes, all one together, or anything that's kind of relatively like nature based is all together. Or we're like buildings that are outside that are more like tents and wagons, that kind of thing. It's like, okay, we'll put that in floral nature animal.
I like how
Just because it's
you're
one thing in
categorizing
there.
everything. I like how you're
Yeah, it
doing
just
that.
makes it easier from a voting standpoint. But then also because when people are going through, there could be 300 models, so it's hard. If you have something you're specifically interested in, then you can click that filter and then allow you just to specifically focus on those. But so then we go, okay, all right, well, what's the next set that's down the list that's 16 to 1,800-ish parts, somewhere in there? Because if we want to do this 4,000 part set, what would then fit in line with that? And there's Antique Store. So didn't have a building yet, so boom, that's how you get kind of 2 4,000 part sets. So
That's
we're always
awesome.
going to look and see how do you fit, based off of what the highest voted sets are, and then how can you slot everything else in around it. So just because of that, there might be like 2 or 3 scenarios where we say, there's nothing available that, once we start going through the screening process, like let's say Antique Store, there was some kind of build in there that we couldn't do, and it was something that we couldn't easily fix. That's another thing too, is just because there's an issue with a model doesn't mean that we won't select it. It's something that we would have to do major reconstruction to, that would either A, take too much time, or B, would change too much of the model, that it then wouldn't reflect what fans had voted on. So so then we'll look at it that way and say, okay, well, if Antique Store wasn't available, what's our backup? And then we'll also do an in-depth screening on those as well. So.
Yeah, and I had that you had actually answered my question in there. I really do like that y'all are choosing different size sets now, where we saw early on, all these big chunky builds. Whereas now, like with the last wave, when I was able to buy the general store, but then the Snack Shack, people went crazy for it. They loved it. That to me was really nice, because to me that shows that it gives access more to more people, because not everybody can go and buy the general store, or like the set that the next with the Transylvania castle as an example.
I love that.
Not everybody can go and buy that. It's out of their price range, but
It is.
the antique store or the popcorn cart, those are something that everybody in a general spec could go in and purchase. So I'm glad that is part of that process, where you're taking size into account and saying, hey, we could do big set, medium set, little set, and go in with that. I think is a very smart idea, both from a collector standpoint, but also from a marketing standpoint. It's good marketing when you can hit all the niches in the price range.
Yeah.
And also
Well,
fitting
and that's
that
the other thing too.
within the
If we just went with the top 5 every time, you'd get a lot of 4,000 part castles. So it wouldn't be very fun. It would get old very quickly.
There's a lot of castles, but there's a lot of castle
Yeah.
fans, and coming somewhere where I quite often get jokes from people saying, well, you can't go anywhere within 10, 15 minutes England without finding a castle, and I do live about 15 minutes away from one, so that kind of fits that.
You're getting it both ways, yeah.
So there have been a lot of castles, and there are a lot of castles, but they're all absolutely fantastic. I love them, so I'm I'm a castle fan, so that's great. And me and we're talking about, obviously, I mean, we talk about this anyway, not just because the podcast is on, because we talk about the program just because we love it anyway. We're both big modular fans, and so we were talking about the fact that BDP no longer allowing modular submissions through the process. And we thought, we were talking about the castles thing, weren't we? And we were thinking, I wonder if that's going to happen with castles, because there's so many castles. But we were wondering, can you give us any insight into that decision around modulars? Was it because of there was so many submissions? And me and Puck were talking about, what impact do you think that will have on the future of the program? Is there anything around that decision that you decided because of the way that you want the program to go, or what was there any a main reason for that decision?
Yeah, so the number one reason for it is because it's an ongoing kind of theme within the Lego group. So you will see the other themes that were in there were Ninjago, Monkey Kid, Friends, Dreams. We didn't originally have modulars in there, but the more we thought about it, and we're talking to other teams, it's like, hey, this should probably be in there, because every year there is a modular in a sense. So it is a theme. It just doesn't have its own, it's Lego icons modulars essentially.
Right.
So we didn't initially include it in there because we weren't thinking, oh well, this is a theme. It is, but in a sense, it is its own theme. There's a yearly release for it, and there is some semblance of kind of story and design style that goes along with that. So if we are to do modulars, then we're kind of playing, we're trying to play nice in the overall sandbox of things. And so we're starting to kind of step into their territory, which isn't a good thing to do. So that's kind of the overall reason for it as a whole. Now, from a voting standpoint, and you've seen this for finalists that have been selected, this didn't affect any of the series 1 through 5
Right.
selections.
Mm.
And there was one modular that was selected, Brick Cross, but it's kind of unique in a sense because it's both train and modular. And so it kind of pulls in that train vote along with it. The
Yeah.
modular votes have not been as high as I think people have been thinking it is. And I think there's one really good reason for that. And that's because typically they're extremely detailed. And because of that, they're always pushing that 4,000 part threshold, which is
Right.
something we almost touched on earlier, is that this is where the good designers are kind of separated from the great designers. And they are factoring in, what is the final value of this set going to be, or what is the price of this set going to be?
Right. And it
And
gives you that
fans are
price when you're building,
well, I mean,
or an
that
idea,
price is,
idea.
it kind of gives you an idea because that price is based off of Bricklink pricing, which is,
Right.
there's a whole lot of inefficiency in that Bricklink pricing versus what we are manufacturing sets at. But let's just say you use the 10 cents per part kind of threshold.
Yeah.
We're below that, and you can kind of go back and do the math on where it's at. But it's not just a price per part count or element. There's several factors that go into pricing. Well, how much do the elements weigh? How many different types of parts are there? How many total parts are there? All those things factor into it. But what you see is you have 4,000 part modulars on a 32 by 32 base plate. It's going to be at minimum 300 to 350, somewhere in there, maybe, because let's just say they're smaller elements. But then you go look at a modular that's on a store shelf and it's 230. Well, there's a big difference, So people are looking at saying, there's nothing new, there's nothing unique about this. It's just a really good design. But is it worth $100 and something extra dollars? No. And so you're not seeing it get the votes that they typically would have. So that made that kind of decision a little bit easier. Or it made it, I don't want to say it was an easy decision because we were making the decision regardless, but it didn't seem like, okay, this shouldn't affect the fan community as much as we might think it might. But I think that all being said, I think I'm excited for Series 6 submissions to come out because I think people are going to see that it's not that modulars, it's that format that we can't do. It doesn't mean you can't do city buildings that would be in like an adult Lego city, if that makes sense.
Right.
Whereas
Yeah.
most Lego city buildings they're targeted to children, whereas there is a space available for adult style Lego city buildings, if that makes sense. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
you'll
like
see
a pub,
those are
for
still here.
example.
Yeah. It's just the only thing is that I think people are kind of separating or picking parts of the rule and not understand and kind of there's some like tinfoil hat conspiracy that comes along with it. All we're saying is don't do a base plate that's 32 by 32 or 32 by 48 or whatever the multiples of 16 are. Just don't do that with Technic connection points, with like building all the way to the side like a modular does, with the sidewalk layout. Just that's the modular style. Don't do that.
And that's
okay?
that's
all we're saying.
That's what I wanted to kind of have you explain, because that was the point of that question, because I think a lot of people were confused as to what that guideline was to kind of get an idea. And you answered that perfectly, because I had wondered. I was like, what exactly do they mean by that? Like and a lot of people have come and asked me, because I like to dive into the program, and I was like, I really don't know. I should ask the person that will know. That's
I
where
know
we came up
someone
with the
that will
question.
know. Yeah.
So when you submit, we don't flat out reject most submissions. So the only time we flat out reject anything is if you're blatantly not following multiple rules. So you submit a 200 part Star Wars set. It's like, okay, not only is this IP, but it's below the 400 part count threshold, or it's over the 4,000. Or, 70% of the parts are outside of the palette. Things that can't easily be fixed. Otherwise, we're working with the fan designers to say like, hey, we want this to be a good experience. We know you put a ton of effort into this. Like, we're going to do our due diligence to honor that and respect the amount of time that you put into this. And then hopefully give you some guidelines and some tips to make your model better, or to make it more appealing to the general audience. And say, oh, okay, here's a handful of elements. They may not be in the palette. Okay, just update these, and then we have a function where we can kick the model back to you. It's still submitted, still within that period. Again, the 2 weeks for submission, you just have to submit it. It doesn't have to be approved during that period. There's a whole nother week afterwards where, like right now, this whole last week was spent working with fan designers and saying, hey, here's something. If we didn't approve your model after the first review of it, we'll say, hey, here's something that you need to adjust. They adjust it. Boom, good, approved.
Oh,
So
that's
we
amazing.
spend time going
you
through.
do go back.
Yeah. Oh yeah. We go back and forth with fan designers, and sometimes we'll have fan designers submit stuff at the last hour, and they'll say, hey, this isn't complete yet, but hopefully over the weekend I can finish it. Cool. Totally
That's
fine.
awesome.
We get it. It's just, we can't, the way that our system works, you can't add anything after the fact. So just make sure it's submitted, put it in the notes that said like, hey, I'm still working on this. There's only one render, but I want to add more. Okay. As long as you just got to get it submitted in that time period. And then all those changes and everything needs to be done before voting goes live. So, typically you have 2 extra weekends to, there's a whole nother, what ends up being like 10 days essentially that you have extra once it's submitted to kind of get things ironed out. And then we need that time too, because if we're going to give everyone feedback on their models, there's 300 plus models coming in. So we need to, that takes a lot of time on our end too. So it's kind of mutually beneficial for both sides.
I don't envy you having to make the decisions, because
No, I don't either.
that
Oh,
must
it's
be,
rough
like I
work.
said,
I have to look at Lego models all day. It's terrible.
I know you. Poor thing. I feel so bad for you.
Hire me. I'll do it for you.
Yeah,
I'll
right?
come do it.
I know
Woe
a
is
few
me. It's
people
so
that would
bad.
probably take that off your hands if you like.
Yeah.
Like I said to you earlier, I think that would be a really fascinating process to sit like a fly on the wall and watch that, because I can see that getting quite passionate while you're making decisions about that. Because I'm just looking at the Series 3 at the moment. I've got up,
Yeah, the series. I
we've
got
got
it
the
up
Lost
as well.
City,
I've
the
got
camping
questions.
adventure, the forest strongholds, the art of the chocolate, which is so cute. And the Harbour Master's Office, which I just love. And I, you just heard it in my voice there. Yeah, apologies for that squeaky voice. It just gets so excited looking at them, and I can imagine that room, you guys sitting there and bouncing that out. Does that get quite noisy sometimes?
Well, it's fun, it's fun going through the review process, because, the great thing is that we don't have to make too many hard decisions, because it's literally go off the votes, the next one down. So it's kind of, we don't, it's not like, oh, do we go this or that? It's very formulaic in how we do things. So I'm very thankful for that, because it would be very difficult to make some of those decisions, be like, we're going to go with this over that, just because that's what I think is better. No, we leave it up to the fan community is voting for what they want. And then we can say, oh, well, that's what they're choosing. So good. But yeah, no, it's very fun. So submission intake is usually one of the best times of the year, just because we get to see all this creativity coming in. And it's just so fun. Obviously we get an email that says, hey, there's a new submission. And so we all, scurry over and look at it and see what it is. But then we also have, kind of a slideshow running in the office so that everyone else that's not just on the BDP program can see all of these really cool models as they're coming in too. So
I'm really jealous.
yeah, it's fun to share. Those are always it's a fun week, and then too, once we get into pre-ordering, that's really fun, because now, we're kind of, it's the realization that this is actually happening, especially for the fan designers.
Yeah.
And so we kind of get like secondhand enjoyment out of that too, where
imagine.
it's like,
I'm sure they're just like,
that point.
They're like, oh, I can't wait.
Well, because up to that point, like, yes, there's theoretically, a way where their model doesn't get realized if it doesn't sell, the minimum amount of sets. But like the 3,000, it's it's likely going to sell out. That's not, it's not something to worry about, but it's always something in the back of your mind where then like, hey, if someone sells a set out in 8 hours, it's like, that's really exciting, and it's like, oh, yes, there's a point where, there's a little bit of sadness in the sense that not everyone is going to be able to get the set that they want, but also a joy for the fan designer that, they're like,
That must
this is actually
be
happening. That actually,
that
it's
must be
one
one
step
of
closer to them having their hands on it.
it must be such a nice part of your job reaching out to them and saying, yeah, you've made it. I can't imagine what that must feel like, for people who, this was all mainly for most of us, this was a childhood hobby that we got into, and a lot of us that go through that sort of awkward dark phase and then come back to it later in life, you know uh, but we all have quite what often many people have, that inherent nostalgic love for it. I'm assuming that's something. But what about you personally? Did you grow up with Lego? Did you come to it later in life?
Yeah, so I had it all the way up through. I played with Lego bricks and had Lego sets all the time, or growing up. I remember the first present I remember that was kind of not a birthday present or a Christmas gift or something like that was, I remember my parents picking me up from school just a random day and them having Forbidden Island in the back of the car. And seeing that, being like, oh my God, and back in that time they had the flip up covers so you could still see the elements inside the
Oh,
box, and just
I
looking at that the whole way home and just being like,
Lego
I'm
I
brings
so
back
miss
the
excited.
flip
What
up.
is this for? Because
I miss those
but
days. I really
yeah,
do. I
Yeah.
miss the flip covers. Oh,
but but that was that, and I'm a big Star Wars fan, so Star Wars was kind of, that was the
I can see
last of
behind
this
Mm.
you.
that I had.
Yeah,
Yeah, a little
for
bit,
our for our
Um,
listeners, Alex is sat in front of a phenomenal range of Star Wars sets there. But you also mock your Star Wars yourself, don't you?
Yeah, that was kind of how I got into it. So, the first wave of 99 2000, that was middle school, freshman year of high school for me. So that was kind of the tail end of things before you kind of you get too cool for thing, and then you come back into it. So I came back in 2019 is when I came back. So it was the
Okay.
20th anniversary Star Wars sets that brought me back in specifically. It
Ah,
was my grandmother sent me a check for my birthday, or for Christmas,
Hey,
and she
that's
said,
always nice.
yeah, exactly. But she said something like, buy something fun for yourself, not,
aw,
something that's just different.
Don't
that's
Or,
go
really
pay your don't
new,
go
lovely.
pay
or,
your
buy adult stuff with, when you
don't go
get
pay your
checks.
bills. Don't
Yeah.
do that.
Yeah,
So I went and bought the Slave one at that
oh
time.
yeah,
So it was
yeah,
Very nice.
the well, yeah, the 20th anniversary Slave one that had,
Yeah.
yeah. That
Leia
was a
as the
great set.
anniversary figure in it.
Yeah,
So that brought me into it. But then I was like, oh my God, like these have come so far from what they used to
hmm,
be, in a sense. So,
yeah,
and Lego sets were great as kids, but like now the detail is just incredible.
yeah.
And that's just is a really good set. So I got lucky that I just picked a really good one from the start. But yeah, that kind of brought me back into it. So I started building. I started it. You fall fast. So
Well,
it
and
was it was a spiral by the end of
2019,
the year. Yeah.
2019, that
Your
was
living room
pre.
fills up quickly.
Well, that was
Yeah.
pre-COVID, wasn't it? And I think a lot of people that we've talked to all had the same experience. COVID came along and Lego did very, very well because a lot of
Mhm.
us fell headfirst into our, collections, and hobbies grew a lot from then. So,
Have
Well, it was
you
a
it
big
was something
noticed?
you
perspective
could do.
shift.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you noticed that? And actually, that was my question with the perspective shift. Have you noticed that uh, less people are having their quote unquote dark ages now, where you're seeing that kids are just going through and building all the way up to college because it's now, oh, well, adults are doing this, so we can just build for eternity, basically.
I don't have any empirical evidence on it, but I think just in general, society is less adverse to stigmatizing hobbies and things like
Mm,
nerddom is cool in a sense. So like
yeah.
it's having something that you're passionate about isn't taboo anymore. Like and maybe this was just an American thing. I don't know. I mean, that's just, where I come from and where I know is like, yeah, this wasn't cool. I would never talk to my friends about it, but then I got a job with Lego, and then, some of my best friends from college, they're like, yeah, I build Lego too. And I'm like, what? How have we never talked about it? So like,
Because
We've had,
we're still hiding in the closet of Lego.
yeah,
essentially though. So, but then it really, like, COVID really flipped the script on that, in a sense that, all of a sudden then you had people decorating shelves behind them for work to make it not just this boring white wall. And so then I started seeing that, and so it was like, oh, okay. It normalized things a lot. And so I feel like kids that are coming up, like, sure, there's this weird conundrum where, maybe kids are trying to go more digital and adults are trying to become less digital. And so, like, physical building, like
yeah,
building with Lego bricks is decompressing at the end of the day.
Yeah.
it
So,
is.
you kind of have that transition that's happening, but I think children are still staying as they turn into teens and adults. Those dark ages maybe are less than they used to be, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. Where
No, that
it
makes
might
total
just be
sense.
when
Yeah.
you go off to college because you don't physically have the space for it, or
But
or
even
the income
but
for it.
even
That
then,
kind of thing.
even then, you could be doing where you move into things like it that you see behind me. You move into the botanicals theme where, oh, I'm in college, but I want a little bit. Well, let's build a plant. I can put it on my desk. There's space to have a little bit.
Yeah.
I've seen people do that. Um, I had a question related to the program again, and I wasn't sure if we had touched base on it at all. The mock pop-up store that happened. I think it was last year or the year before. I think it was last year. Is that something we could potentially see in the future again? As something that happens again where we have sets that we saw and wanted but didn't make it through? Is that a potential for that to come back? If you're able to
Yeah,
answer that question.
no, it's possible. The biggest thing is that right now we're in the process of replatforming the whole website, so that's priority
Oh,
number
so
one
there is
at this
a
point.
whole replatform
Yeah, yeah.
reversion
So
going.
there's a lot of work being done on the website as it is, because the website is very old,
I
as you
I
know,
get oh
and so there's a lot of work that
navigating
needs to be done for
sometimes
that. Yes, so
navigating
that's
that website.
priority number one.
Now, do you have a team that's specifically working on that currently that is redoing the whole the website? Is that a whole nother team that does that?
No, that's
No.
everyone.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Well, I have this joke too that, like, I don't have as much purview to that side of the business because, we're kind of off doing our thing, and
Right, of
yes, we
course.
have touch points with the rest of the business. So I'm not the foremost expert on any of this. But I've always joked that, like, I feel like 99% of what we spend our time on is tax and compliance, because, all these different countries that we operate in around the world, they're always changing tax laws, and there's some new data privacy thing, or there's always something going on. And so I always feel
I
like
really
that's what
wish
we're
the
spending most of our time on. But yeah. Now, if they're not doing that, they're doing replatforming work, or
How funny is that? You spend your most time on tax and we spend our most money on it.
yeah.
There's something
I
very
really
cohesive on there.
I really wish they could come up with a way to kind of get along so that process, because I know people that are in that world, and they're like, I really wish they could just get along and we could figure out a system that would mesh well together. But I don't think that'll ever happen.
Well, but we're in a time where the world is changing significantly, where the tax system was figured out for brick and mortar, and now, with everything, a lot of things moving to digital or being done online, and interstate, or I guess intercountry, global commerce, things get tricky real quick, especially with some of the older books or laws that are on the books, and you
Right,
have
of
100
course.
and something countries that have different laws. Yeah, I'm sure at some point, we probably won't be dealing with this 30 years from now once a standard's kind of been figured out. And then it's going to be, okay, well, how do we tax things between Earth and Mars and, what other planet we're living on? So
Right.
on to the next
So,
tax issue.
oh no, yeah. moving away from taxes because, let's not talk about that anymore than we need to. I just wondered, just going back to what you said is, you came back to it in 2019. So how did it then suddenly become your career? How did that happen?
It was kind of out of the blue, really. So I had been very active and still am as active as I can be in my local LUG, which is the Orange County LUG.
Okay.
We work very closely with the LUGOLA, which is a Lego user group of Los Angeles. We're
That's a big
fortunate
one.
that
That's a
there's
big one.
yeah, so it's fortunate that we're both pretty close from a geographic standpoint. So we are separate, but we also will do certain events together and that kind of thing. Like, so this weekend, both are displaying at LA Comic Con. And so I have a model there for that as well. So I try to still participate, like we're doing Moonbase as a lug. So I did a Moonbase build for that.
Wow, nice.
But yeah, I was active in the lug for a few years. So I was hired into Bricklink the very end of 2022. So right as we announced Series 1, as they were really scaling things up.
Oh wow, that's a big time to come in.
Yeah. Well, and it was specifically, obviously, because they were scaling up BDP, and so then we needed, employees for that, and so that's kind of where I was
They
brought in
just
at.
brought you in and threw
But
you
yeah,
in
I
at
was
the
just
deep.
recruited out of the. But I had came to a meeting at the Bricklink office, which I did not know was 15 minutes from my house. It just kind of happened, and so I went in, and they said, "Hey, I think they were asking us just, they do kind of focus groups and different things every once in a while, or they're working out a new feature for something, or like when we were originally trying to kick off mock shop and in planning phases of it, say, okay, let's ask let's bring in some people from the log and just ask some questions and just see, what are the kind of pitfalls and that kind of thing." So we did that. I came in and they said, "Oh, well, we're looking for somebody for building instructions and we need some digital designers for that." And so kind of went from there, where I guess my experience and where I was at from my career at that point kind of aligned more with the project manager role. So then I took that over, and I interviewed like 5 days after my first son was born. And so it was like kind of a whirlwind
Whoa.
where it was like, oh, okay,
Congratulations,
well,
by the way.
thank you. Yeah, well, we have so now have 2 kids. So we have 2 boys. But so it's kind of another whirlwind thing where it's like, oh, okay, I need to finish up my paternity leave with my previous employer. And then, so then that's what brought me to December. So when I was able to start.
That's
So yeah,
fantastic.
so it was kind of real quick, and then it was like, hey, I started on a Monday, and then that Friday we announced Series 1 was happening, and all of the different things that were going live with that. So it was really,
Wow.
it was kind of like come in and go. But that
Yeah.
was, one of the benefits of it was, I came from the fan community, so the language, the idea, the design, thoughts, kind of what do we need to do. A lot, I had a lot of that already in me in a sense. So,
Yeah.
not only did I have the skills from my previous career, but then I also had the knowledge of how Lego kind of operates from a standpoint, or what we need to do to maybe realize some of these designs and some of those things that really, helped out. So it was kind of hit the ground running and go. So.
Well, that's exciting because I've just moved into a job where I'm in my first project lead job. So just, in the future, you never know if you need
Yeah.
somebody,
Yeah.
if you're
Yeah.
looking for someone. Just
There's a
saying.
lot of project managers. Yeah.
Do
You go.
when you're at like LA Comic Con and you're at like Brick World Chicago and places where you're talking about the designer program, do you get a lot of people that show interest in coming to work for you guys? Is that something that you also are looking at when you're meeting people, like who might be a potential good candidate to come work for you guys and join your team?
Yeah, oh, for sure. I mean, that's, we're always kind of keeping an eye out, and obviously there's a lot of very talented people in the fan community. That's one of the things we're always looking for people. The problem is there's not a lot of roles that are available. I think that's something you tend to see is that Lego's a little bit different of a company in that the retention rate of employees and kind of the length of tenure is very long. There are several people celebrating 25 years every week, yet you might see there's several 40, 50-year type people that are still in the company as well. So,
I mean, who wants to leave? Who would
I
want to
was gonna
leave?
say-
exactly.
Who'd
Yeah,
want
kind of
to
once you're here, you're here, and it's kind of hard to, especially if it's something that you're very passionate about. But yeah, whenever we have roles opened up, there's no shortage of applicants. So, but we do have things where, like, we keep in mind too that we have things like community expert panel or program. I think it's community expert panel. Maybe it's program. But we have other people that help out on the Bricklink website in ways where they help with catalog, or they help with different panels. Like they may be on a studio panel where we kind of like an early access program where
Right.
if we're developing a feature, they're kind of a group of community sounding board that we use. So there's other things like that too that we have as well, or we like forum moderators, that kind of thing. So there's this whole other kind of Bricklink, not Bricklink team as well that we have too. So yeah, we're always kind of keeping an eye out for individuals that maybe have a specific specialty that we're looking at. And that's kind of the really cool thing about the Lego hobby, is that it manifests itself in so many different ways for the highest affinity fans. Where we have people that just collect everything. They're kind of the collection persona. You have people that are extremely interested in the history and archivist type persona. You have people that are purely there from a social standpoint, where it's kind of, that's their social interaction. It's a group that understand, everyone is very interested in Lego in a sense, but this is not only a safe space, but then it's your people that understand you. And Lego's kind of the icebreaker for conversations and dialogue in a sense. And then you have the
best
creatives.
part. It's the best part about it.
I know. And I like to think that that's kind of like the one that's in the center and everyone kind of pieces off of that. But that's still kind of, one of the main ones. And then, you have content creators who are, doing podcasts or are, using social media or anything like that. Like that might be the niche that you're in. You have creatives. So you have people that are just building mocks. Like, I always try to talk about, like, there's a certain point at which fans will eventually grow out of purchasing Lego sets, and they might purchase sets here or there, but a majority of what they purchase are elements themselves. Like they're just buying elements directly through Pick a Brick or their lug, or they're doing through Bricklink, or there are people they just want elements because they free build everything they do, and they just build mocks. And you see it when you go to conventions where there's these huge, wildly detailed sets that that's kind of its own area of the fandom. So that's the great thing, is that this fandom has so many different places where you can tie into, and you can be as many or as few of them as you want to be. But then at the end of the day, everyone's just very passionate about Lego, and we can all have a conversation together and get along.
And I think that's what allows Lego to endure, is that you have so many places you can go within it, and you don't have to be constrained to one thing, because there are so many choices. And I know many different people that do many different things within that, where there are people that do it purely for social. They're like, oh yeah, no, it relieves some stress at the end of the day, but it also, I go and I bring these sets to my lug group to display, but I'm not really into buying a bunch of pieces and building my own stuff. I just want to build and then go and socialize with people in the lug group. So it's fantastic.
Yeah,
it really is.
And I think just you were saying there about people asking you questions. For any of our live listeners, if you want to pop any questions for Alex in the chat, so we'll be wrapping this up soon. If somebody has been considering putting a submission through, and there's just that little something telling them they're not so sure, what would your advice to them be? What would you advise them for those people who would like to submit, maybe just a bit anxious? What would you recommend?
I would say please submit because, well, I mentioned this earlier. There is no kind of instant, kind of rejection or anything like that. We're here trying to foster the community. So I don't know where, if maybe this is just from general life or what, but I feel like there are a lot of people that are very hesitant to submit because they don't want to feel like they're being judged in a sense. So, that's kind of why we have the voting process the way that it is. You can see, you can vote, love it, like, not for me, but those aren't outwardly visible because I don't want people to see, hey, I have half of my votes are not for me, you know, and that doesn't mean that that's a bad model. It just means there's a lot of people that aren't interested in that type of model, if that makes sense. So there's
That makes
some
sense.
kind of,
Yeah.
it's not overly negative. It just means, yeah, I'm not interested in that, even though it might be really cool, but I still am, so on it, whatever. But what we want to do is I would love people to submit as much as they can because you can't, if you want to grow or if this is something you're interested in maybe experiencing or expanding into with your hobby, is submit to the program. We always provide, we try to provide as much feedback as we can to you, letting you know, hey, these are things that you could do to improve your model or maybe take it to the next level. Or in general, too, it's usually really positive because there's everyone's a really talented designer. We just want people to feel included and like I said earlier, it's just respecting people's time. People are putting a lot of time and effort into this. And I know as adults, kind of, the more you need time, the less you have. And, so we want to try to help, everyone out as much as possible. But if you're not, if you feel like, oh, I'm a beginner and there's so many great designs, well, you have to start somewhere. So as soon as you submit, we can kind of help guide you along this path. And hopefully if you're open to it and you want feedback and you would like to, participate and have conversations, we're open for it. That's what we're here for. So, I always say submit because if you can't submit, then we never have the conversation to begin with.
Yeah.
So.
I love
And
that too.
a community member has posted a question. With the changes Lego did with ideas, what does that mean for Bricklink? Will we see $1,000 sets?
I hope not. That means insane inflation or a ton of work on our end. You're gonna have 10,000 part sets. No, I've seen that there's been a change in how many elements that Lego Ideas is doing. But I have no other insight into that. We try to work hand in hand together because the way I explain it is, this is a very American thing to say, but I look at it as like BDP is the junior varsity program and Lego Ideas is the varsity. Because I see it as much more prestigious in a sense because it's an official Lego set. You can go to the store and see it on shelves and whatnot. But there's slightly different targets and outcomes from the program, if that makes sense. But
I call it the cutthroat program because you do get that. Oh well, this person has X amount of followers voting for this, and you look at it in a much more narrow viewpoint versus with Bricklink, like you said, where you have that light bar.
That is a difference in the sense that there's a lot more marketing and kind of self-promotion that needs to go on with Lego Ideas. Whereas we've had at least a handful of fan designers that have zero social media presence at all. So if that is something that you have a hang up on, then maybe BDP is the place for you, and you don't have to go through, all the self-promotion, that kind of thing that needs to go there. But yeah, each program has strengths and weaknesses. Like we can't do intellectual property. We have to use. I think this is probably one of the other really big things that people forget about is that we have to use active elements that already exist. So, sometimes they'll say, these minifigures, there's nothing new. And it's like, yeah, that's the entire point of the program. We couldn't do this if there were new minifigures or, like in the castle sets of like, or classic space. If there's no classic space torsos available, you're not going to see a classic space set. And if there's no castle sets on shelves, then there's not going to be castle minifigures. So you're probably not going to see castle submissions in a sense. So, those are all things that our program is a lot more fluid because it's really reacting to what's currently available. Like you saw when the Wolfpack torso became available, like the amount of castle submissions doubled because there was a Wolfpack torso available. So that was like
Everybody jumped on it.
yeah. So sometimes you see like, hey, there's these decorated elements or all this animals available now. So maybe you're going to see more submissions that are tied to that specific animal, or these type of parts that are available. Or if there's really cool, unique new part available, then you're going to see something tied to that. So we kind of are a little bit more meandering, and we'll adapt to what the fans are adapting to whatever is currently available. So
I think that makes it even more interesting. I really do.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, and you see, like, look at the Series 3 models right now. I mean, they're pretty broad spectrum in the sense that, you have camping adventure that I think
So sweet.
it's so cute, but it also
is so
love
cute.
pairs so well with other sets too. And that's something that you hear about is that, like, oh, I love the set, but we were talking about this earlier, is
I
Put
think
it next
you
to
might
the
love a
A-frame
set, and it's like,
cabin.
oh yeah, next to the A-frame cabin. So there's an image we show of it next to the A-frame cabin, because if you're looking at it and you say, oh, I didn't buy the A-frame cabin because I didn't know there was anything to put next to it, or I didn't have like a nature area I could put that in. Well, now there's two sets. So if that's the impetus and preventing you from ordering, even though you love it, it's cool. Here's something else. Or
and I do love the
Harbor
tree.
Master
That autumn tree in that set is so pretty. And I just, me and we've already talked about the, I love the variety in this round. Me and Puck were talking about it. And just
I'm
to
so
remind
excited for the Harbor
everyone,
Master's office.
that these Series 3 are opening to purchase on the 8th of October. So put that in your calendar, guys, if you haven't already got it in there, because these sets are absolutely beautiful. I think what I found difficult about this series is that it's difficult because I'm one of those people that just like, oh, I love that, I love that, I love that. But quite often, ones will like really stand out and I'll be like, oh, that's the one for me. I think this round is it's so great. I love them all. It would be so hard to choose which one to go for. But yeah, that camping adventure set is adorable. I really like that. Yeah.
Well, and we hope there's one set for everyone in a series, or maybe out of the 15 for a year. Again, obviously it gets expensive very quickly.
Right.
So that's where it's like, hey, the idea is hopefully that one of these models resonates with you. And we're kind of getting into the more, niche parts of the hobby, or, we're looking at, I look at like Series 2 Logging a Railway would have never have been a Lego system set. And I love that we can celebrate those types of models where, you can get a curved trellis bridge, for a train set.
And it's beautiful.
It's beautiful. And I think people kind of sleep on how large that model is. But I think, that's the thing that I love most about our program, is that you're going to get all of these very unique things. Or, we kind of started talking about theming earlier, where you have a few fan designers that have already kind of created their mini little worlds, where, Strom has the Tiny World of Wonders with Mushroom House and Mushroom Village.
I'm so excited for that second set.
Yeah. Hanwa's and Harry has the Mountain Windmill from the 2021 Invitational, but then that leads into Ocean House and Riverside Scholars. And so there's the whole, story of the little boy going, from place to place. And so, that's a whole different thing. You start to see kind of the resurgence of Wild West, where now you see a lot more Wild West submissions, knowing that, like, hey, there's one or two of these already on shelf or available. So
the Series 4 Wild West train is on my list of wanting to be acquired, because it's going to go great with the general store, where you have the general store and you put the train coming right up to it. And I think with this one that's releasing on October 8th, I'm looking at the pre-orders. What I found to also be really nice is, so you have that range of the sizes, but then you also have the range of displayability and playability and the way that they're built is different. And I like that because you have the Harbor's Master's office, which is in that modular-esque style, but it's not modular because it's not on a base plate style build. It's its own entity. But then you have the Art of Chocolate, which opens up and you get to see the whole inside of the chocolate factory, but then it closes and you can have that sit in a city or on a shelf or anything displayed either way. The Forest Stronghold, you're looking at kind of like the Lion's Night Castle, where you've got the whole building, but then you also are able to see on the inside, which I love. Camping Adventure, like we talked about, goes great with like the A-frame cabin, but also nods towards the last series where we had the Snack Shack. It's a nice little build, and it gives an option for someone saying that only has that $60 budget. Oh, okay, well now I have something from this program that I can buy and not have to bring my bank. And then you have the Lost City, which is again very like Lion's Night style, where you're able to open and get on the inside and look around it and see what everything is. Or you put it up against a wall on a shelf and it's just a pretty display piece.
I mean, it's a beautiful model in person, and actually quite tall.
I have to ask.
All the detail. Go ahead.
How far before pre-sales happen do you get to see the models built in advance?
Before we choose finalists. So it's early. It's early in a sense, though. So we have an entire park library in a sense.
Okay.
In our office here, so we can pull elements from. Now we may not have every element and every color, but we have a good representation of everything. So hey, you might get kind of like the confetti mix of a model, but that's something we build them even before they're chosen as a finalist, just to double check and make sure. Like I said,
you get to make
like
rainbow versions. He's saying rainbow to me.
It's not
He's
fully
saying
rainbow version, but
he made a rainbow. I
newer
want to see the
elements
rainbow version of the Lost City. Show me
I
that.
would love that.
I would
love
buy
to see
that.
I don't think you do. It doesn't do it justice at all.
But yeah,
so it's funny. The first time we actually see it fully in its version or in its true state is typically about 2.5 months after it's selected as a final. So that's by the time we get the what we call a volume sample. So they send us all the elements for that specific set.
That must be an exciting day.
Yeah.
Do you
No,
guys
it's
just
very
sit?
fun.
Do you just sit in the office and build all day?
I don't specifically get to, but the model designers do, which is very fun. Yeah. Well, I get to build it towards the end. Towards the end of the process, I get to sign off on. I have all of my Series 3 models here.
They're just sitting. They're just
ready to
sitting by them.
Just off camera.
Well, they're like, they come in like, this is what we call a volume sample.
Okay.
So
very nice. Okay.
This is Camping Adventure. So
I can tell by the leaves. I can see the leaves in there.
So I'll do a final test build for the instruction just to make sure everything's good.
Fantastic.
Because we're still, even now, we're still, that Series 3 will launch in March 1st. Technically, you may see them be a little bit before, or you may see them after, depending on where you're located geographically. Because, like I said, I think I mentioned this earlier, that we don't hold on to these in a warehouse. As soon as they're manufactured, they're sent out. Now, because of that, historically, Europe would always receive theirs first because they were closest to the factory. Even though the first sets off the line go to the APAC market, because that has the longest shipping time, because they have to go on a boat all the way over. So then you'll end up seeing, it takes a little bit longer. So they might get their sets a month later, depending on how long shipping's taking or whatever's going on in the world. There's all kinds of different things that happen there too. So, but now US and Europe have, typically will receive them about the same time. So
I'm just waiting for that notice come November.
But then that's all. But it creates all kinds of other challenges too, because like when for series 1, we were like, oh, wouldn't it be cool to have fan media do reviews of these sets like they do for other Lego system sets? I was like, yeah, that would be cool. But wait a minute. These models are, we're crowdfunding 2 months before they're even going to begin manufacturing. So how are we going to do that? And then, the instructions aren't even done yet when we give them the fans. So how are they going to build them? And so it's like, oh, okay, how do we figure this out?
That doesn't work.
They
Is that
get the
something-
very first rough draft of instruction. It's literally just a pure export. So there's there could be issues with the instructions or final build flow things where we need to.
Yeah, I was going to
move
ask about that.
everything ever so slightly. So that's why we ask them not to comment too much on that, because the packaging, you see what they get. It's just a volume sample. And all of those are hand picked too. So there might be missing a part or two.
piece or yeah.
Yeah. And fortunately, they're getting a lot of other sets, or they're receiving a lot of other sets. So if they potentially might have to grab something from another set, or, but if it does happen, not saying that it happens every time, but, that could be, something to worry about. Or so the first couple series, I think series 3 now, a lot of fan media kind of understands, and even the fan community kind of understands what this program is and kind of how it is, and all the different peculiarities of how we have to do things because we're doing it so differently. But as this is a fan design model, so it's going to be a little different. It's this is pre-production, so that's going to be a little different. There's no box art to show you. It's but you have a general idea of what it's going to look like. The instructions aren't quite ready, so we'll give you the latest and greatest of what we have, but there's still another 3 months of working on the instruction.
I love that.
No, that's just amazing.
So, everybody, just keep these dates in your diary then. So the 8th of October, that's the Series 3 crowdfunding for the Harbour Master's Office, the Art of the Chocolate, Forest Stronghold, the Camping Adventure, and the Lost City. But you also have the voting for Series 6 opening on the 7th of October, which goes through to the October 18th. So make sure you go online. And I think we have one more question for Alex, don't we?
Yeah, we have to ask that question.
And you use the words element a lot, so that links in well.
Yeah. Your favorite Lego element of the day?
Oh.
Yeah, I know.
It could just be sitting on your desk. It could be something you've used recently. We have so many different answers we get.
The hard one.
It is.
Because I know I'm gonna be like, no, I should have picked this later. It has to be.
We choose.
It has to be some kind of snot brick.
Everyone.
It has to be some type of snot brick. I don't know if it's just the standard, like the headlight brick is. It's classic, but there's so many unique and cool things you can do with the headlight brick, because you can lay it on its back. You can use it to adjust depth by the half plate thickness.
Yep.
It has bar connection points. You know what? I'm gonna go wild card on this one. I'm gonna go with the new 1x1 by 2/3 height round brick with stud on side.
Okay.
So,
that's
a little. I know
that's
the Bricklink lingo is just spilling out at you, but
no, I know what
was
part you're talking about. I know which one you're talking about. Yeah.
The best.
the rounded backside of it
description.
makes it just so. It's such an adaptable piece.
The use of that piece to be able to stick it in a corner and build around it in a corner section, and then attach things to it. I was just blown away that piece was developed. I was like, finally, I can fit something in this tiny little corner and build up and tile it if I would like. Yeah, that's an amazing piece. I'm gonna have to say today is probably going to be the day that I say that the brick separator is my favorite element currently, because I've had to use it a lot. I've had to use it a lot lately.
The brick separator.
Yeah, I finally.
Separator.
Teal or orange, or dark turquoise or orange.
Teal.
Today is orange. I finally wore out. I have hundreds of these, probably 1,000 of them, maybe.
Yeah, we all do.
But I finally wore out the one that I was using for probably the last like 5 years or so. It finally broke on me. It was like I can't do this anymore. It's like I'm dead. So
Not
that's my
not
piece
the
today.
Chonky Boy.
Oh, I've got one of those
Oh,
too. Oh
yeah.
yeah, Chunky Boy is great.
For
From the
those
art set.
people who are listening,
Yeah.
Alex is showing off his collection of. He's flexing his brick separator collection.
For the old school.
Oh,
This is
Yeah.
the
and in
original.
green,
in
too.
green.
That's a
Yeah.
lucky
Nice.
find.
That's
Just
nice.
happened to
Oh,
have
man.
this sitting next to me.
Oh, of course, of course. Just happened to be there.
And there's a,
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, look
from
at
the
that.
dot. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Can be used actually as an element because it has connection points.
I didn't realize you could do that.
Oh,
I've
So
seen
yeah, it's a
people
bar.
use.
Yeah.
I've seen people use the separators for roofing and side paneling, which is a really interesting use of a brick separator, if I have to say so. What about you,
Well,
Becca?
as we were talking about the camping set, I'm going to go for the printed, the log piece, the round, the round tile with the printed
Yeah.
log piece on the end, because that it's a lovely little detail, isn't it? And it completely changes the look of that. You know that is representing the logs on the fire, for example. You can see as a perfect example. It just completely changes it up. You know me, how much I love a print. So that's the one I'm going to go for today. But,
Well, we wanna thank you so much for coming and talking with us. It's been a great time asking you questions and having questions answered that we have been kind of thinking about for the past couple months since I met you in Chicago. I was like, I have a list of questions that I want to ask this dude. What can we ask him? So we really do thank you for coming and taking your time out of your
Yeah,
busy
thank you.
schedule.
do you want
Thank
to
you for
sort
sharing
of
this time with me.
shout out where people can find Bricklink, any useful places to go?
Yeah, to me, it's just go to bricklink.com. That's the number one thing. Or we're on social media as well, and there'll be all kinds of different announcements that you'll see there. But yeah, the most important dates that we have Monday is the crowd voting for Series 6 goes live, so that'll be a lot of fun. So it's kind of get to see all of the new models that have been submitted for Series 6. That's at noon. Pacific time, so it's 7 p.m. UK time, 8 p.m. Central Europe.
8
I think
p.m. I
8
think,
hours.
maybe.
Are we 8 hours or are we 8 right now?
I think we're
7 to UK.
You would be 8 hours. Yep.
Yeah.
Or is it 8? Okay. I don't know. Daylight savings is coming soon, and then that just throws
Yeah,
everything
that
for a
is
loop.
confusing. Time zones.
I'm gonna put these up on screen for people too.
But yeah,
You
so
guys
then we have October 8th at 8 a.m. is when crowdfunding for Series 3 goes live. So yeah, those are kind of the two of the most important dates so far for
Lovely.
the upcoming here. And
Thank
then I
you.
think we announced the finalists for Series 6 in mid-November. So
Awesome,
November.
fantastic.
That's great. It's been such an interesting conversation. Thank you so much for listening to us grill you and for giving such fantastic answers and for spending your very, very valuable time, not only as a busy in your career, but obviously your family life as well. We just really, really appreciate your time. Thank you so much. And thank
And
you
thank
for
you,
everybody that's listening as well. Both.
We appreciate
wow.
everyone coming out and watching as we talk with Alex. And just to let you guys know, you can find us on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, I'm missing one, Amazon, and of course here on Twitch. And you can listen to us on our website at buzzsprout.com, Brick City Radio Podcast. And we will see you guys next time. Thank you guys so much. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
thank you.